In this week's Across the Pod podcast, I am joined by Redmen TV's Ste Hoare, who gives me his thoughts on the declining Tennessee Titans.
Titans just look so impotent offense at the moment. Obviously, the quarterback injuries are a big blow, but the receiving core is not very good.
And I give my thoughts on the latest concussion for Tua.
I don't think he'll play, certainly this week, and I think I'm certainly not against him being out the rest of the year, because at the end of the day, his health is way more important than anything and winning games. So I think hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. We are here for a Week 16 review, and with me I've got a very special guest. If you're a Liverpool fan or into football, you may well know this man very well. I've got with me Redmen TV, Ste Hoare. How are you, Ste?
I'm very good, mate. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to it. Nice to talk about a different sport rather than football. Well, soccer all the time, I suppose.
Yeah, of course, it's busy time for both sports, but how was your Christmas overall?
It was very, very good, yeah. I've got two young kids, so it's chaos. But yeah, I had a good one, mate. Yeah, it was plenty of food was eaten and plenty of alcohol drunk, and like I say, I've got an 8-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl, so you can imagine our house was just carnage. But it's been good.
I can only imagine. I mean, someone who hasn't got kids, I can't imagine what that's like having young ones. But it must be nice at the same time, you know, have kids believing in Santa and all that. It must be quite a nice experience as a parent for a young kid to have that. But of course, anyone who knows Ste from his Twitter or his previous work on Cover 2 TV will know that he's a Green Bay Packers fan. So I want to ask you, as your first-time guest on the podcast, what made you Green Bay Packers?
Yeah, it's a long time ago now. So Brett Favre was the quarterback when I started following the Packers. It was essentially very, very simple. Me and my brother used to play Madden all the time, and he found out that being the Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning was almost like a cheat code. At every team I tried to beat him with, I couldn't get nowhere near, and one day I stumbled on the Packers, basically. This was in the early 2000s, and I beat him. And then it was because Brett Favre was just ridiculous on the game. And then, yeah, so I just started getting interested in them through that, really, and then read up on them, started watching them, and before I knew it, yeah, it was 20-odd years later, and I'm still here supporting them. So, yeah, that it was literally, it all came through the video game. And then it just stemmed from there, really.
And of course, would that mean he's your favourite player as a Packers fan since you've been a fan, or is there any other player that maybe stands out for you as an all-time favourite?
Yeah, listen, I don't think Brett Favre's in the news for any positive reasons at the moment, so I'm not sure that will be a wise. Listen, the best player's been Aaron Rodgers, of course, but my favourite Packer was probably Jordy Nelson. I love Jordy Nelson. I thought he was unbelievable. So, but yeah, Rodgers is clearly. I mean, I love Brett Favre. Don't get me wrong, and I know he won Super Bowls, but Rodgers I think was better than him. But yeah, I've always had a soft spot for Jordy Nelson, the elite receiver as well. So yeah, he was like when I was growing up in that era when they obviously won the Super Bowl as well. He was probably my favourite player at the time.
Yeah, I remember when I first started watching NFL, the first Super Bowl I remember was the one where you beat the Steelers in Dallas. I remember the player I saw first quite liked was Donald Driver. He was someone I even though obviously he's a Packers legend and stuff like that, and I never really knew anything about many players, but he's the one player that I always remember when I first started watching it, 2010, 2011 sort of time. He was the guy that sort of stood out for me. Of course, we are here for the whole Week 16 review, but we will be going through later on the Dolphins-Packers game. But of course, we want to go through some previous games that took place. So the first one happened on Friday or Thursday Night Football as the Jacksonville Jaguars beat the New York Jets by a score of 19 points to 3. Now, that's what I want to go to first, because first of all, I want to get your thoughts on the Jets, because Zach Wilson was terrible again. And it looks like Mike White is going to be the guy moving forward, but have you seen a team with sort of the comparison between how good that defense is and how bad the offense has looked? Have you seen a team more sort of lopsided in your time watching the NFL?
Yeah, I was trying to think really. He was horrendous, and I don't know. I saw him live at the London game. They played the Falcons, and he looked. He was young, but he looked okay. He had a big arm and things, but it just appears to me now, you asked a question about, good defensive and good coming. There's another Wilson in the league who's in the exact same boat at the moment, although he's got a bit more pedigree. He's in a very similar boat. But yeah, it's weird. It just shows, it's an obvious thing to say, isn't it? But like Andy, the quarterback is so important, because if the Jets had the 15th, 16th best quarterback in the league, they would be maybe even a Super Bowl contender, at least a playoff team. But it just shows they are getting sunk, and it's mad to say, but Mike White's better than him at the moment. I don't think he done himself any favor. It appears like his team don't like him very much as well, which is never a good thing, But yeah, they are. Yeah, I do think like the Jets, they're building something really, really good. And the GM, it's mad because they've built a very good team, but they got that position wrong, and it looks like they got it wrong again. And they did it with Sam Darnold, it didn't work out, and now they've done it again with Zach Wilson. It just feels like that's the only missing piece you can get. I know there's a lot of free agents this year. I mean, God forbid, you might end up with Geno Smith back in, and even if they had him, if he was playing now, like he was like, if he transferred to how he's doing now in Seattle over to the Jets, they would be a playoff team. I'm certain of it. So yeah, it's interesting. They've got to get that one right. The issue they might have is that obviously, come the draft, they might be too low down in the draft to get a good one. So they might be going to free agency, and that way, you're looking at your Garoppolos and your Smiths of the world. And listen, they might be good options, because I agree. Like defensively, they're unbelievable. Sauce Gardner might be the best cornerback in the league, and he's played like 15 games or something. It's stupidly good, but Jacksonville didn't really have to work that hard to win. And with all due respect, like if you're not making Jacksonville work hard to beat you, yeah, especially offensively, something's probably going wrong.
Yeah, I agree, and it goes back. There's been actually a lot of talk this week about the season before that 2021 draft, where the Jets start winning games towards the end. There's been a lot of talk about that basically costing them Trevor Lawrence. You look at how Trevor Lawrence has really had a resurgence this year, and he's become the quarterback, especially the last 4 weeks or so, the quarterback we all thought we were getting out of Clemson. And it does strike you that, yeah, it's great to win games, and it's great to have the fighting for every game and trying to win as many games as possible. But at the same time, I don't know whether you agree with me, I do think they probably regret those wins now.
Yeah, it's hard to say, because listen, they were a win or two away from the playoffs. Like I say, if Breece Hall doesn't get injured, they might still be in the playoffs, because it seemed like when he got injured, that's when they'd all started going wrong for Zach Wilson. So it's hard to say they regret winning, because they would say for a while they were in the race to win the division. Never mind just make a wild card, obviously, before the Bills sealed that one up. So it's difficult, but I think you might remember as well, if you're a head coach and you're relatively new, like Robert Saleh is, losing games get you sacked, get you fired. So it's all good getting a better draft pick, but we've seen a coach this year not even last a full season. It happened last season as well. So there's no guarantees on anything. If it doesn't go right, you might not be the one who's making those picks. So I like the Jets. I think they've got a good base. They look like a very good team who could just put in a good free agent quarterback and be fine and be really good. They've got good running backs, good receivers, and amazing defensively. So I think they're in good shape, but they just have to get that one right, because they keep getting it wrong. Listen, it might be Mike White. He's okay, he's decent enough, but I think if they can get again, I just go back to like someone like Jimmy Garoppolo. It just seems like if he's fit and fine, and they look like he could be a perfect fit there for them. Just a middle of the road quarterback who can take a good defense to the Super Bowl. We've literally seen him do that as well. So someone like that, but yeah, I do feel like it's just gone wrong. It's gone really badly wrong for Zach Wilson, and I just don't see any comeback from it for him.
No, I agree, and I think especially with Brock Purdy's sort of emergence this season, I do think Jimmy Garoppolo would be the standout one. I think there's Baker Mayfield's available, obviously Lamar Jackson, but I think he'll get franchise tagged if anything. And I think Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith is on that list. I think Geno Smith, Baker, and Garoppolo, I think, are the three main sort of players you look at who are free agents. Of course, they lost to the Jaguars, and they're in a different flipping to them. Of course, they, with their win, and also the Titans with their surprise loss to the Houston Texans by 19 points to 14. It means that with 2 games left as the playoff picture currently lies, the Jaguars won in the division, the AFC South, with 7-9 record, which both South divisions aren't exactly been the best this year, but in terms of the Jag, they've got the Texans coming up next Sunday, and the Titans have the Cowboys. So that could easily be, a 1-game lead over the Titans come week 18 when they both play each other. Do you think they can do it? Do you think they can go on and win this division?
Well, effectively, next week doesn't really matter, does it? So it all comes down to that week 18. They could both win. They could both. It doesn't matter. It's a one-game shootout. I wonder how that plays into both teams. Like, they could lose to the Texans and then still win the division, and vice versa. The Titans, because of the tie-break situation. So they can definitely do it, because it's just what you're essentially saying. It's a one-game shootout against the Titans, who look terrible, by the way. And again, Malik Willis might be good one day, but at the moment in time, he is not doing anything. So Ryan Tannehill's injured again. So yeah, I actually think they can. I think they will. I think they'll. Again, this week they'll probably beat the Texans, but you wonder at one point, if there's anybody with any type of injury or anything, just sit them down, don't worry about it, and then just plan to beat the Titans, and they certainly can, and I think they probably will. The Titans just look so impotent on offense at the moment. Obviously, the quarterback injuries are a big blow-up, but the receiving core is not very good. Derrick Henry, we had one big run, but it felt like it was just, it was almost 9-man boxes at some point from the Texans, because they're just not scared of the pass whatsoever. There's no real good receivers, and the quarterback looked like he was struggling. So if that's still the case, you'd expect the Jaguars to do the same. And like you mentioned before, Trevor Lawrence, I think there was a lot of doubts about him, especially last season. He looked like he was struggling a lot. Like this season at the start, he's been hit and miss, but he feels like a very streaky quarterback. Like he has games, or within games almost, where he looks like he's on fire. And at this moment in time, it looks like he's got it together. And again, with a good running game, I know it was Etienne, wasn't it, the other day, because he lost Pierce, but they look decent enough. What I like about Trevor Lawrence as well is that he's willing to run around a bit more now. It feels like he was trying to be this perfect pocket passer for a while, and I think he's realised, no, actually, I'm quite athletic. I can get myself out, whether it's obviously scrambles or zone reads or whatever, but that helps them as well. So I would expect them to. I actually do expect them to win the division. I think the Jaguars will be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that this time of year is all about momentum and all about how a team goes, how their form goes into the end of the season. And I do think that Titans are struggling. I think the Tannehill injury, even though he wasn't perfect, I think that's hit them in a really bad time. I think Derrick Henry didn't practice either today or yesterday or the day before that, so he's a doubt as well. I think they proved this year that if you stop the running game, you stop the Titans. And I think Derrick Henry, him not being there potentially against one of the best defenses in the league, I think they'll lose that game. I think the Jags beat the Texans, and I think that come week 18, I think it's hard to tell, but I just think that the Titans are in a bad way, and I think they'll learn from this next season. They'll go into it after the whole AJ Brown trade. I think they got a new GM as well, and I think they will try and get a receiver, whether it's free agency or the draft, because that decision to trade him away was crazy in my eyes, and I think they've definitely paid the price for that. Moving on to Saturday, Christmas Eve games, we saw this week as the Bills beat the Chicago Bears 35 points to 13. The New Orleans Saints beat the Cleveland Browns by 17 points to 10. The Chiefs won again. They won 24-10 against the Seattle Seahawks. The Cincinnati Bengals edged out the Patriots, a 22-18 win. And the Baltimore Ravens clinched the playoffs with a 17-9 win over the Atlanta Falcons. The next game I want to focus on is the New York Giants, who took on the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. And the Vikings did edge out the Giants 27 points to 24. And that's really where I want to start, because obviously your co-worker, Chris Pajak, is a big Vikings fan. But I'm looking here at their wins, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because they beat the Packers, as you know, comfortably week 1. But their other wins, they beat the Lions by just 4, the Saints by just 3 in London. They beat the Cardinals by just 4. They beat the Dolphins without Tua by, I think it was 10 points or something. No, 8 points. They beat the Commanders by 3, beat the Bills by 3 in overtime. They scraped past the Jets and the Patriots, and they beat the Colts in overtime after being 33 points down, 33-0 down half time. And they just edge out the Giants. And their losses as well, 2 of them were by 40 points to 3 and by 24 points to 7. I personally think that they are one of the biggest frauds we've seen. Have this many wins, I think they could easily be a 9-win team and not a 12-win team. What's your take as a Packers fan? You may well meet them in the first round of the playoffs. What's your take on the Vikings? And do you think they're as good as their record suggests?
Well, we played them this week as well, so if you want to beat them in the playoffs, you have to beat them this week. It depends how you look at it. There's two ways of looking at it, and there's that. Well, if you win close games, then that shows you've got something about you. I mean, like that, because they always say that you end up with regression to the mean at some point. Like they say, every win since they played the Packers, I think, has been a one-score game. So they're always in tight games. Well, I think what it shows is actually they're pretty good offensively, and they're not brilliant defensively. I think that's where we're at. So they're going to be in close games because that's kind of where they're at. Dalvin Cook, I don't know, they just haven't been able to seem to close out these games. But when you've got such a good passing attack, you're never out of games. Like you referenced that Colts game, and if Justin Jefferson goes off, which he can, like he did again at the weekend, and obviously since he traded for Hawkinson as well, and he's the same. They have got such a good passing offense that it's going to be. I think it would be hard for them without the running game to kill games off, but they're never out of it, and they're terrifying to play against because it could be 3rd and 25, and Jefferson will just get open at 20 for 26, and it's or worst case, Kirk Cousins will just throw it up in the air and he'll come down with it because he is just incredible. Like I add in Hawkinson, and then Osborne's been playing well. Adam Thielens hardly there, but he's very, very good as well. The passing game is really, really good. You can't argue against it. I don't think they're very good defensively, and I think that's why they keep getting up in these close games. And in a very un-Vikings-like fashion, the kick has been good, which has helped because that doesn't really happen for the Vikings. It's usually kickers who cost them. But like I say, 60-yard field goal the other day to win or whatever it was. So I think there are 5 teams I think who can win the Super Bowl, and I think there's only 2 in the NFC. I think it's the Eagles and the 49ers, the only 2 NFC teams I think can win the Super Bowl, and I think there's 3 in the AFC. But I think the Vikings are they're playoff worthy, and it's just whether like that defense can hold up long enough, because it's all well and good flinging the ball around inside domes or whatever, but at some point they might have to go outdoors. Going to away in Philadelphia, can that passing game be able to work that well? Who knows? That's probably the road is probably going to have to go through Philly. Maybe it could work against the Niners if they have to go to San Francisco. So there's ways and things about it, but I think they are good. They're clearly the best team in our division. They storm that division, but I think they're like the next tier below than if the elite teams. But like you say, it's one-score games. They can anything, bounce of a ball or one call here or there can get it against you. But I think it's the passing attack is so good is why they're in that position.
Yeah, I agree. Because looking at the defensive stats, they're second worst in the league when it comes to total yards allowed per game. And then in terms of the points allowed in the season, they're like in the bottom 5. So I think that is a big problem. I think when they come up against Hurts and AJ Brown, or they come up against Christian McCaffrey and Debo and Ayuk, and I think all these, even the Cowboys, you got that brilliant run game. You've got obviously Dak Prescott as well. I think that's when they'll really struggle. And I think next season when they may well get a harder schedule because of winning the division, and I think that could be a massive issue for them. But I think this season, they remind me a bit like the Dolphins in some ways, that on their day they can beat anyone, but they've got limitations when it comes to their pass defense, and I think that is their biggest issue going into the rest of the season. And further forward, and I do fear for them that they will lose in the first game, whether it's you guys, whether it's the Lions, whether it's the Seahawks. I just think that they will. Also, it's Kirk Cousins in prime time. I know that he won that game the other day on against the Colts, but I think Kirk Cousins is a player that has never really performed in a big game apart from that one Saints game. What was it, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever it was? Yeah,
it's difficult because what I will say is that on the flip side is that there's no guarantees. Like the Packers, they could easily wipe the floor with us again, because I have to emphasize, you are right to say, but the passing game is so good. It's so good. It's so varied, and they've got 4 options on every single play. So you double cover Justin Jefferson. It doesn't really matter because he can catch it, but if that's the case, TJ Hawkinson's streaking down one-on-one, or Thielen or Osborne. They use the running game well as well. So what I think that the key is going to be is that it's when they play against a really top-level defense, because I don't think their defense isn't going to be able to stop anybody. So they effectively need to win. That's why it's all one-score games. They effectively need to win close games / shootouts almost, and that will be tough for them. But they can outgun anybody. That's what I would say. That's what they'll be looking at. They're going, listen, we can outscore anybody. But I don't think they can win the Super Bowl. But I wouldn't be listening. They could get to that first round game, wild card weekend. They could even get the 2 seed, by the way, because there's every possibility they beat us, and I think it's the Lions, it's the Lions, isn't it? I think they end with. I'm not sure, but might be the Bears. Actually, it's the Bears. I think it's the Bears. Actually, they've got 2 divisional games to end with, and they could win both of them, and then they could even be the 2 seed. So. I would expect them actually to win on wildcard weekend. I think I think they will win on wildcard weekend, and then it'll be divisional round where they probably come up against a really good team where they might end up going out.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what they can do the rest of the season. Other games that went on Christmas Eve, the Lions lost again. They lost by 37 points to 23 over the Carolina Panthers.
That was good. That was good for us. I don't know, from a Packers point of view, that we needed like 5 results to all go our way on that day to keep things relatively close, and every single one of them happened before. So we went into Christmas knowing, oh my goodness, this is a big game, because I think, like you say, we had actually, funny enough, the Vikings winning was one of those results. So the Giants losing was great for us. Washington losing, in a way, the Cowboys winning helped the Packers in certain ways as well, due to strength of schedules and all, and also the fact that Philly can't rest players against Washington later on. So yeah, it was weird that you mentioned all these games, and obviously the Lions getting beat by the Panthers was a big one as well. Everything, I was sitting there on Christmas Eve, obviously half wrapping presents, getting the stuff ready and after doing it with Red Zone. I was like, everything is falling our way, which probably means we're going to poo the bed tomorrow. Thankfully we didn't, but yeah, it did feel like it was written somewhere that every single result, that we needed like 5 things to go our way, and they did. It was a good Christmas Eve on that front.
Yeah, and it was certainly helped the next day by the Dolphins-Packers game. It was a 26-20 win for the Green Bay Packers against the Dolphins. That means it's now a 4th straight loss when it comes to the Dolphins, as we went from at one point the 2nd overall seed to now we're still the 7th seed, but it's getting worse and worse. But in terms of the game itself, obviously it was fairly tight for the first 3 quarters, and then the whole second half, the offense imploded with Tua throwing 3 interceptions in the second half. As now that means that the Packers are now 7-8. They're well in the playoff hunt, and looking at their schedule, I mean, it's a real massive upturn in form, because I was at Lambeau Field just a month ago when he lost to the Titans on Thursday Night Football. You know, it seemed dead. It seemed dead to rights till season. No one thought, they would go on and do this, and they've won. At the moment, it's 3 games straight for the first time since week 4. What's your take been on the season? Because it's been, before the season, everyone had you as one of the contenders. We had a few Packers fans on in our season preview. Abby had an unbeaten season. Everyone had you guys winning the division. Everyone had you winning double-digit games. But it's not turned out that way. But the form recently has been really good. I mean, you've beaten the Rams 24-12, beat the Bears 28-19, and then you beat ourselves 26-20, and you got the Vikings and Lions left. Just what's your take been on what's been a really weird season for you guys?
Yeah, just offensively, really poor, struggling really to get things going. The turnaround in form, which come from, I think, the running game's gotten better. Rodgers was injured, and I think he's getting a bit better now. He got injured, obviously, against the Giants at Tottenham. And after that, it was a bit ropey, and then he had to miss a game. Obviously, missed one of the games where he got taken off for Jordan Love. But yeah, and I think defense, we're not very good defensively. Is the overall point of it? We just can't stop we couldn't stop anybody for a long time. And when that was happening, usually you think, well, Rodgers will bail us out or something. It just didn't work. We had the receiving game went everywhere. So obviously losing Devontae Adams in the summer was obviously going to be a blow, and then Christian Watson took a while to get settled in. He started to come back around, but obviously he got injured again. So every team gets injuries, but I just think the Packers, that didn't help. That didn't help them. But I think what it shows is that the Packers have always been a very good team, but Rodgers has elevated them. And this season, when Rodgers was just good to below average, whatever, at times bad, there was nothing else to kind of. It was like everything is so Aaron Rodgers centric that if he doesn't play well, it's really tough for the Packers to do anything of note, and that's what it was. Even now, the other day, he was streaky. he's had more interceptions this season than he had in the last 2 or 3. It's mad. Like he never throws picks, and this year he has. It's obviously been, you see him fighting with his receiver at times, or they run the wrong route or whatever. So it has just been a bit messy. And like we are talking about the playoffs here and the fact that they might get in. They can't win. I don't think they can win the Super Bowl. They're nowhere near that level. So it'd be nice to be in the playoffs, of course. But listen, I can't see the Packers going on the road 3 times and winning. I just don't think they're built for that this year. But like I say, what was interesting about the Dolphins case, like we got pressure on Tua without our best pass rusher. We're down a corner. The linebackers coming back helps. Obviously Tua throwing it to them helped as well. But it does feel a bit. They started to get players just about back, so Jones and Dillon is the key. They've been fit and healthy, and we've been using them a lot. And then a lot of the passing game will be intermediate passes to Cobb or to Dobbs, a bit of Watson, and then we'll try and go for the big play once a quarter. It happened against the Dolphins where they hit Mercedes Lewis. No, I don't think Mercedes Lewis has ran that far in over 10 years. He's usually just that, and he probably dropped it as well, which didn't help. But I think that's what it is. We're a bit predictable, but yeah, what I would say about them is like, you've seen other teams just fold the seasons in and just this isn't for us. See you later. Reference the Indianapolis Colts in that regard. They try. They just don't look. How do you be 33-0 up and lose, and then it's just things like that. At least the Packers always fight hard. I think they've got the head coaches, a really good head coach. I really like Matt LaFleur, and he gets the lads going. But yeah, defensively he's not been great. I actually think one of the turnarounds, sorry to go on a bit, has actually been on special teams as well. Is that we had Amari Rodgers catching kickoffs and punts, and I think he fumbled like 8 of them. It was mad. And then they bring Keyshawn Nixon in, and first of all he can catch, and second of all he can return the ball. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, this is what it's like to have an actual return game where not every drive is starting in your own 15 or with your team with the ball. I think that was a huge play at the weekend on that kickoff return. That was one of the things that swung it. So just the bits around the edges have started coming together. It's not there yet, but it's not as embarrassing as I think we lost like 5 straight again. I remember Taylor Heineke beat us, and then like you say, we lost in Lambeau on a Thursday to the Titans, and it was just we lost in London to the Giants. It was all very doom and gloom. It feels like we had a few green shoots recently because they were rubbish. Like I can't emphasize how in that losing streak they were really, really bad, and it looked like this is the end of Rodgers. Everything's going to go. Jordan Love's going to be in the team before we start long. We're going to trade Rodgers away, and all of a sudden they've started turning it around a little bit where it's a bit more respectable now.
Yeah, and I think there was one point where I think Jordan Love came in during a game, I can't think who they were playing, where he looked all right, and I think a lot of people were thinking, season's done, just play him and just let him have some reps, and then it's just been turned around completely. And I think you mentioned Keyshawn Nixon. I was actually going to give him my next point because he's really come into the limelight the last few weeks. I think the Rams game, he was good as well. And obviously this game, he was a big component of that win. And I think that was a big thing. But in terms of the Dolphins fan, I it's a worry, but there's still hope for me because if we beat the Patriots and the Jets lose to the Seahawks, we are in regardless of what happens next week. And I think for me, that's our goal was start the year was to make the playoffs. I don't think anyone was ever thinking we were going to win a division or be a 5th seed. I think everyone was sort of thinking if we're going to make it, it's going to be as a wildcard team. And I think that's some sort of progress. I think I've been a bit miffed by some of the play calling by McDaniel at times. Although with a guy as funny as he is, it's really hard to be mad at him. And he's also a first-year coach. So I think that he does get a freebie, whereas, if it's second or third year, as Cliff Kingsbury is now discovering, that free pass does go once you hit your second or third year. So I think McDaniel will learn from the season regardless. And I think that whatever happens the rest of the year with Tua, I don't think he'll play certainly this week. And I think I'm certainly not against him being out the rest of the year because at the end of the day, his health is way more important than anything and winning games. So I think it's a worry because we were 8-3 at one point. It's a worry. And I think that once again, it is our defense that's letting us down because offensive wise, if you exclude the 2 interceptions, we are a team that has been lights out on offense. And even in this game, I think Hill and Waddle had about between a combined 9 receptions, about I think about 170 yards or something. So, the offense for me was mostly good. I think the second half was obviously a meltdown, but I think, we proved that, we can beat anyone on a day, and I think our offense can just turn it on whenever they need to. But I think our defense has to start performing better because we're allowing too many big plays. And I'm at a point now where I'm generally more comfortable with the team defending a 3rd and 1 than I am the team defending a 3rd and 12, because the amount of big plays on pass defense we allow is just too many. But I've still got faith. I still think we can beat the Patriots even without Tua, and I think that even if it's down to the run game, I think we will beat them. But if we don't, and the Jets win against the Seahawks, that's a mammoth of a last game, and I really do think that it's going to be a really tense. My birthday is also on that weekend, so I'm hoping that my birthday isn't ruined too much by that.
Mate, that's a tough game. The Patriots for a backup to play, and the two things it was great. It's strange. Like, we don't even know when he got concussed, but if you look at some of those last throws, it wouldn't be shocked if it was before, especially the last one. It's just like that looks like someone who's not altogether there. I think that's fair to say. That was just throws it to the guy. It's strange. Like, I know he's had concussion issue, but it's weird that he goes into concussion protocol on the Monday. Obviously, Bridgewater's going to. The Patriots' defense is really good. They've got the offense is bad, but that's a tough game for a backup. At least it's an experienced backup to go into. And like you say, what I felt from a Packers playing Dolphins was that I was the big play is always there. Like, I think Tua had 200 yards off 5 throws or something, but it always felt like it was big play or nothing. The underneath stuff wasn't really working for them. I think and then the Packers started trying to almost bracket Tyreek Hill. That's how the first. I think it's the first interception comes. He's got a ring around him, and it was like, well, let's get somebody else to beat us then. And Tua made the wrong read. Like, there was 5 other guys he should have threw that ball to before he threw it to the triple covered guy. But it might suit the Dolphins to be with Teddy if they do to be a bit more intermediate. But I think that's a tough game. I actually think they probably lose, but I think the Seahawks might beat the Jets anyway, which helps going in for it. But I think the Patriots defense is really good. The pass rush is excellent. They cover well, and the only thing that's the weird thing with the Patriots, I've played against them a long time, is that they look really poorly coached this year. Usually that's something you don't get with them. I know they've got Matt Patricia coaching. They just make dumb mistakes like that you just don't associate with them. But they are still a very good defense, and for a backup quarterback to play against them, I think that would be tough.
Yeah, and I think the offense has been a big issue because their defense is actually really good. I mean, Matt Judon's an absolute beast. I mean, they're just like that. It's the one thing keeping them in games, and I think that the win against the Jets at 10-3 was the last second. I mean, that was all on the defense is to thank for that, because their offense was not performing at all. Mac Jones has severely regressed with Patricia as his OC. And I think that's one thing I think we'll see next year. I think there's a lot of talk of Bill O'Brien coming in as the OC. There's also some people talking about, actually comparing it to some people thinking Hackett may come back to the Packers. Now he's been fired by the Broncos, and I think there's a lot of talk that McDaniels, if he loses his job at the Raiders, they may well just bring him back and have him there going forward. But I think, the Patriots are as bad as they've been on offense, and but you can never really write out the Patriots. Bill Belichick, as difficult as the season's been, I think they're a team that you can never really bet against. We will go on to our final games before ending the episode. Eagles did lose their second game of the season. They lost 40 points to 34 to the Cowboys, but did have Gardner Minshew rather than Jalen Hurts. The Steelers won with 40 seconds to go. They won this game against the Raiders, 13 points to 10, which was a memory, of course, to Franco Harris. And then Christmas Day saw the Rams beat the Broncos by 51 points to 14, which did ultimately cost Hackett his job. The Buccaneers still lead the NFC South. They won by 19 points to 16 against the Arizona Cardinals. And then finally, the Chargers confirmed their place in the playoffs by beating the Colts 20 points to 3, which did eliminate the Colts from their own playoff contention. Before we do go, we're going to give Steve one last question before we do go. We're going to give you a chance to name me your Super Bowl matchup and who's going to win it.
I think it will be the 49ers against the Bills, and I think the Bills will win.
that's not a bad shout. I was thinking the Bills as well, but I think the Bills will win against the Eagles. I think the Eagles. I do think I'll be shocked if it isn't an Eagles-Niners NFC Championship game, and I do think that as good as he's been coming in, Brock Purdy is yet to really face like a big game, and I think that I have this feeling. I had the same thing with Jared Goff when he made Super Bowl a few years ago. I do think, even though he's been really good, he has all the potential sort of really letting that occasion get to him. And I think that the Eagles, both teams are very well. I think Shanahan may be the best, to have the best scheme in the NFL. He's been amazing. But I just think that the Eagles maybe have, I don't know, it'd be a great game. It'd be a great game to watch. But I think that the Bills will find a way to beat them. I think they're a team that isn't perfect, but I think they're, again, hitting form at the right time. And I think they will go on and win it. And I think that it will be a Bills win. But that has been the end of our Week 16 review. So thank you, Steve, for coming on, first of all.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
No problem at all. And if obviously I will put Steve's details all on our tweet when you do get this podcast released, so you can find his work on there. And for the Redmen TV show, so if you're a Liverpool fan and you want Liverpool content and you don't know the Redmen TV, then do check out his work. But that has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I've been Andy, this has been Steve, and we will see you guys next time.